Welcome back to another episode of Art of MMA. I'm your host, Mike Ginn, joined as always, of course, the mechanic, Brandon Cuttino. And this show is, of course, brought to you on the Fighters First Network, FightersFirst.shop. Get all your latest, greatest merch and apparel. Brandon, how you doing this week, man? We had a lot of action to talk about from last week.
It's Wednesday. You know what that means. Time to talk some fights.
Absolutely. Before we get into everything that happened this week, one quick shout out. Last week's winners for the giveaway. I've given away 2 of them. Still looking for Valerie Morris. So, Valerie, last chance. Check your comments. Get a hold of me. You have till next episode. Otherwise, you miss out. So, I don't want you to miss out. I've given away 2 shirts, both to Shannon Kelly and Zalika Watley. So, I'm looking forward to giving away one more. So, get a hold of me, Valerie. Check out the comment from the episode you left. I put a note on there how to get in touch with me. So, please reach out for us. Now, this week, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to jump right into the action, talking about UFC 266, and then we'll swing around to the news and the MMA. Of course, the whole Jon Jones thing going on, Sterling and Yan, and that whole mix-up. We'll do the rant this week. I got quite a few words for Mr. Dana White. And then we'll finish up and make our picks. We got a lot of action coming up this week with Bellator 247, MVP Lima 2, and then, of course, Santos and Johnny Walker finishing it up at UFC Vegas 38. But, Brandon, you ready to jump right into the action?
Yeah, man. Let's talk about how I kicked your butt in some picks again.
All right. Well, first of all, you didn't really kick my butt. I was 3-1.
Hey, I just want you to know I was undefeated. That's all I got to say. I didn't lose a pick.
Why were you undefeated?
Well, I mean, I would have said
that.
The reason why I was undefeated is because I pick winners. That's why. I pick winners. That's why I was undefeated.
Yeah, Mr. Lee Dog over there went 3-0 again. Of course, his personal fight pick disappeared literally not even an hour after
I would have been 4-0. So, you know, the MMA guys, they were blessing you.
No, you would have been wrong. Because you picked against her.
No.
Anyway, go back and look at the tape. Brandon would have been 3-1 if that fight had anyway. Regardless. UFC 266, we're going to jump right into the action. Of course, Volkanovski, Ortega, the main event. They also had Valentina Shevchenko defending her belt, as well as some great other action. But let's talk about that main event, Brandon. Tell the people at home what happened and break down the action for me.
And exactly what I really said how the fight was going to be. You know, Volkanovski was the better stand-up fighter. I didn't think Ortega had anything really to offer him. The only thing he had was maybe if he was to was to try to get a submission. And which he did. He had 2 opportunities in the 3rd round. He had that guillotine, had his patented triangle choke on him. Volkanovski stayed calm and cool, got out, and then he just put a beating on Ortega. You know, I mean, I think in the 4th round,
in the 4th round too.
Yeah, that was going to say. Yeah, I think in the 4th round he did have another opportunity, but it wasn't as deep as the first 2.
Yeah, he was already beat up at that point.
You know, but yeah, man, like say, man, like shout outs to Volkanovski, man, went out, did his thing. You know, I really want to say, like, besides Kamaru Usman, he probably is another champion, you know, who doesn't get the respect that they deserve. You know, but hopefully after this fight, he does. You know, he gets his praises like how he should. Say, man, dude just went out there, had a nice game plan. To me, man, he really was controlling the whole fight. Besides those just like 2 submissions and maybe the 5th round where like, to be honest with you, I think he really just took his foot off the gas pedal.
I think he got tired at the end. I think he did finally get tired.
I mean, there could be that. I know some people say that, but also too, man, you can look at it as like, yo, you just look at Ortega's face. That dude is done. He's taking a beating, and you don't maybe want to just beat him up some more. So you kind of just ease up.
Probably
you already
know for the 5th round.
Yeah, you know, you already know you got it in the bag. You just got to stay cool, stay smart, you know, and just be cool. So like I said, I mean, I could probably give Ortega the 5th round because he was coming after it. But other than that, man, like I said, it was just all Volkanovski, and still, like I said, it would be.
I think Ortega had a bad game plan. You can't really look at the 5th round as much because I do think Ortega. I couldn't believe one judge gave Volkanovski the 5th round. I thought Ortega clearly won the 5th round. I thought he did more action, and he had Volkanovski rocked towards the end of the fight, which is amazing after all the damage that Brian Ortega took. I thought there's no way Brian Ortega should have still been in the fight in the 5th round, especially with the interactions with the doctors and everything between the rounds. For him to come out that 5th round and still basically pour it on Volkanovski and almost have him rocked and in trouble towards the end of that round. I think Ortega clearly won the 5th round. Was Volkanovski taking the foot off the gas? Did he run out of energy and gas? Both are possible because, I mean, Volkanovski put out so much output in 4 rounds. And especially when he got out of those submission attempts to rain down as much as he did over that time period, takes a lot out of you. Like, you can't just the whole Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope, like he let the other opponent, George Foreman, punch himself out, right? And Sonny Liston, like, they let them punch themselves out. My thing with Ortega is that I kind of disagree with you that he didn't have the better, like Volkanovski had the better stand-up, because at times when Ortega let his hands go, he had the better. But the problem is he just never let his hands go. He was on the defensive. Like, he took the middle of the cage in the very beginning, right? And even the announcers were like, oh my God, Ortega is like not letting Volkanovski be the leader. Like, Volkanovski likes to push the pace. He likes to get into you right off the bat. And Ortega took the middle of the cage and kind of put the pressure on Volkanovski in the very beginning. But it wasn't even by the end of the first round that Volkanovski had turned that around. It was putting the pressure on Ortega. And from that point on, I kind of saw the writing on the wall is that Ortega has the tools. I wasn't wrong that he has the tools. But I think his game plan was just all wrong. If he had went for some of the, like when he went all out for those submission attempts and got him down in the 3rd and 4th round, if he had the energy he had in the 1st round, Volkanovski might not have got out of those, right? Because even Volkanovski said at the one in the 3rd round, that guillotine was tight. He just tried to stay patient. He tried to get out of it. And, of course, at that point, they're slippery, they're bloody. And it did eventually help him get out of that guillotine, which he might not have gotten out of in the 1st round, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not taking anything away from Volkanovski. I thought Volkanovski was pure violence for 4 rounds. I thought he beat the crap out of Ortega and proved why he's the champ. I think Ortega, this fight, might have established himself as a B-level contender at this point because he's good enough to beat everybody else, like the Joseph Benavidez and everybody else that's been in that role in the past, right? We just talked about that last week. But against the top 2 guys, Max and Alex, he's looked like he's been through hell in a war, right? Max beat him up so bad, the ref stopped it in the 4th round, or doctor stopped it in the 4th round. Arguably, the doctor could stop this one in the 3rd or 4th round, both also. I don't really know the qualifications for some of these 10-8 rounds because for a while, Ortega had him locked into a death, like a submission that there's no way Volkanovski should have got out of. And then, of course, the last 30 seconds or whatever it was, he got out and just literally beat the crap out of Ortega. Does that qualify for a 10-8 round when it was really 30 seconds of action? Because it did almost stop the fight, right? Mm-hmm. But do you qualify it based on the whole round? Because the whole round, then maybe it's only a 10-9 round. So I don't really know how the judges scored some of these scorecards. One was 49-46. That made sense to me because there was no 10-8 rounds in that one. One was 50-45, and I was like, okay, maybe one 10-8 round. But then how do you not give Ortega the 5th round? And then the other one was 50-44, which also didn't give Ortega the 5th round and gave multiple 10-8 rounds. So I'm kind of confused about the judging. I don't feel like they were really watching the 5th round. I feel like they had already decided in their mind, like, this is over. And then the other thing I will say about this before I get back to you is that the doctor, I don't think understood who was fighting because he's sitting there like, how many fingers, or first of all, Herb Dean had to step in and like, how many fingers do I have? Follow this, follow that. And Ortega did it. The doctor was trying to talk to him in Spanish. Like, he's like, are you bien? Bien? Brian Ortega is an American. Yeah, he has Hispanic roots, but he's an American. Like,
but he does know.
Saw the last name is like Ortega. Oh, I have to speak Spanish to him.
But Ortega can speak Spanish though, so I mean, it's no big deal.
He can, but you can see in his mind, like you can see how confused he was when the doctor was originally talking Spanish to him, because he's like, wait, what? What are you talking about? Like because he was already concussed, right? He was clearly like damaged at that point. Like there's no reason the doctor should have let that fight go on, but at that point, I can like kind of sympathize. All I'm saying is I can sympathize with Brian Ortega. Because when you're already in damage mode and you're trying to recover, I can't imagine trying to like, wait, what are you saying to me? Like trying to figure something out on the fly versus what would be your natural like language and your natural like right off the bat. You know what I'm saying? Like that's all I'm saying. It's like it just confused Ortega a little bit more than it probably had to. but doctors aren't really paid to know who's fighting. They're just worried about the fighters themselves. So maybe that's a good thing because they don't show biased or whatever towards any fighter because they don't really know who they are. But then it goes the question, what's next for Volkanovski? He's hinted at maybe going to 155 pounds while he's waiting for the winner of Max and Yair. It's pretty clear now it's going to be the winner of Max and Yair. I don't know personally how Dana feels about giving Max a trilogy fight when he's 0-2, even though I personally think Max won the last fight with him. What do you think's next for Volkanovski?
Like I said, I'm the one that told you. I put it out there. I think it's going to be the winner of Max and Yair. And
yeah, I was just playing devil's advocate, but
yeah, but I don't think it matters if it is Max or Yair, or if it is Max because Volkanovski knows that Max, like, it'd be different if Max was just chilling on the sidelines and just waiting for a title opportunity. But Max is going out there and he's fighting people. He's dropping, he's beating people up. So I think that's why Volkanovski has no problem, fighting Max again or anything like that. I mean, like I said, it could be that, but also too, man. Another person, don't forget, man, my boy Giga, he's doing his thing, man. Yo, he might be able to talk his way into a title shot.
I'll throw another name out there that made his name very well known this weekend, Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo is talking about coming back being 4C. Yeah, 4C. He wants a shot at him. He said Volkanovski's the only guy who weighs more but is shorter than him. So Henry Cejudo actually legitimately wants to get back in that cage. I've thought that for a while. He's been calling out every champion that's kind of like stepped in his shoes, both in 135 and 45 pound divisions, 25 and 35 pound divisions. For him to step up to a featherweight, I don't think it's a stretch because he's been off for so long. His weight might be around that anyway. I wouldn't be mad at that. Like, Dana loves to make like those big name fights over fights that might be worthy, right? Like we see Nate Diaz constantly jumping into like contender fights, even though he's lost a number of fights in a row. If it's a name value and it can sell pay-per-views, I wouldn't see any problem with that. And obviously Henry Cejudo dropped his titles to retire. It's not like he left on a bad note. He left as a champion. So could be a hell of a story if he steps up. He's fresh. He could fight they could probably fight in January or something like that while Max and Yair are recovering. And the winner of that fight in the spring. And I think that'd be a hell of a situation. But just throwing that out there. And then, of course, Max and Yair are official now for November 13th, the week after UFC New York. But they're still at a location to be determined. They're not sure if they're going to do it in Vegas or do it somewhere else, possibly even Abu Dhabi. We'll see what's up with that and all their travel plans. Of course, everything with the pandemic, everything keeps going every which way. So we'll see about that. For Ortega, I think he needs to go back, fight a few contenders, and take some time to recover because he took a lot of damage in that fight. And just sit at home and get healthy first and then worry about coming back. Any thoughts about what Ortega should have next?
Rest and recovery. That's what that guy needs. That guy needs to work on his defense. His offense, like stand-up wise or attacking wise, is good. But when you work on but he needs to work on his defense. Like you're saying, you think about this fight, think about his last fight with Holloway. This dude has absorbed like over 200 strikes. So I'm saying he needs to work on his defense. But of course, as he works on his defense, his offense, of course, will get better as well. But to me, that's what he needs to do. He needs to just relax, rest up, heal up, hang out with his girl, Tracy Cortez, and he needs to work on his defense. That's all.
So that's the main event. Let's talk about the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko does what Valentina Shevchenko does. TKO over Lauren Murphy in the fourth round. It's kind of hard to break down this fight. Look, Shevchenko did what she wanted to do for 4 rounds. Did Lauren Murphy have a shot here and there? Maybe. Not even. Maybe.
No.
But Lauren Murphy is another person. I didn't really understand her game plan. When later in the fight, when Lauren Murphy got stopped, right, it's because she got caught because she finally started to go for it. Like she finally started to let her hands go and try to throw some leg kicks and do some different stuff in the third and fourth round. And at least had Valentina hesitate, not going backwards, but I'll say she at least hesitated. And she caught Valentina once, but I don't even think she realized she caught her at the time because she was so beat up. Valentina was faster. Valentina was stronger. Obviously, Valentina's much younger. Lauren Murphy's like 38 years old. She's in the twilight of her career. She wanted that chance and opportunity for a championship, and she got it. She got her title shot. She earned it. You can argue over the JoJo decision. You can argue over a bunch of stuff, but she was one of the top contenders. She's one of the people that haven't fought Shevchenko in the past. So she got a shot. And, I mean, for what it is, Valentina just showed that she is absolutely the top of the class. What did you think of that fight?
Man, there's really nothing to say, man. Just Shevchenko did what she did. I mean, like, Lauren Murphy was just outmatched. You know, there was really nowhere for her to go for this fight. I think in like one of the round, I think she only like attempted like one strike. Another round, she only like attempted 2. Like, that's how you know, man, the fight's over. Like, this girl has no chance of winning this fight. Like, you know, unless Shevchenko like slips and falls, you know, but that wasn't happening. You know, I mean, there's really nothing to do. Like, I mean, you're even listening to like Lauren Murphy's corner when she's going back and they're just giving her some BS. It's like, nah, bro, tell her the truth. She's taking an L right now. She got to do something, change up. But the thing is, like, well, what is it that she can do? You know, it's it was either go for broke. You end up like Jessica I. You play it safe. You end up like what happened to you. Still got stopped in the 4th round. You know?
Yeah, Jessica Andrade, I think you meant.
No, Jessica.
Oh, you're talking about the older fight. The older fight. Okay, I thought you were talking about the last one. Well, Lauren Murphy did comment on the whole coaching thing because people had brought it up to her and asked her about that. And she said that they know her best. They know how to get the motivation. If they had told her she was losing, she probably would have like given up. That was their way of like keeping her in the fight. That's what she likes. That's the kind of coaching she likes. So every fighter's different. Some positive reinforcement. Some need that kick in the ass. She obviously is one that needs more positive reinforcement. It is what it is. For Valentina, I don't really know what's next. Every one of the top 4 contenders are somebody she's already beat. Kavia 5th just came off a loss to Andrade. I don't see how an Andrade Shevchenko fight goes any different, even though Andrade looked absolutely amazing.
Andrade doesn't even want that fight.
She wants to go down.
Well, no, yeah,
115.
Yeah,
she wants Rose. But she is the current number 1 contender in their rankings. You have to go all the way down to what? Arujo at 7 for somebody that she hasn't beat yet.
I mean,
she fought JoJo yet? She fought JoJo, right?
No, she hasn't fought her.
Okay,
no,
so you have to go to 6. You have to go all the way to 6 to somebody she hasn't beat yet.
Yeah, it's saying they might go with the winner of the Calderwood Grasso match.
They might have to, because there's really no other contenders. Some of these young kids, like we've talked about in the past, aren't that high up in the rankings yet. They haven't moved up, and unless they make a big jump and a big splash, it's not going to happen anytime soon. And now you're talking about what's next for Valentina. You got to talk about super fights with Amanda. Amanda has her hands full with some of these fights at 135 and even 145 as they're trying to kind of revive that division a little bit with Holly Holm and Dumont and some of these other fighters.
Man, I'm just saying, dude, if I'm Nunes, I have no reason to do this fight. I already beat you 2 times. No need.
Yeah, I have no reason. Amanda has no interest in this fight. Valentina, for her part, I will say this. Valentina has not called for that fight. She just answers the questions when people ask. And she said she welcomes all challengers. She'd love to fight her again, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Like, Valentina has said the right things. Like, I'm not putting this on Valentina. But like you said, it's already happened twice. And even like the Max Volkanovski fight, if you thought that Valentina won the second fight, which I personally don't. I think Amanda definitely outpointed her. But if you thought she did, she's still down 0-2. And then there's not as much interest for a trilogy in the UFC brass's mind because when you look at rankings and paper, she's 0-2. So first time they fought was very earlier in Valentina's UFC career. And then I heard this name thrown out, and we'll move on in 1 second. I heard this name thrown out. Somebody threw out Joanna Jędrzejczyk, like people always like to throw her out. I want to point something out. Valentina has beaten her, I want to say like 5 times. Because when they were kickboxing, Valentina beat her like 4 times. Mm-hmm. So everybody, you talked about this last week with your rant, how everybody puts, like, you watch the UFC, but you don't watch anything else. Kind of like if you watch WWE, you don't watch anything else. Valentina fought a long time in Muay Thai and kickboxing before she ever came to the UFC. She's beat a lot of the people she beat in the UFC. She beat back in kickboxing and Muay Thai before too. And Joanna Jędrzejczyk is one of those people. who came from the same world. Now, Joanna came to the UFC, caught fire, was undefeated for a long time, was a dominant champion. But one of the people she could never beat was Valentina Shevchenko, who now is one of the top dogs. So I think Joanna would definitely stay in the 115-pound division. We'll obviously got to see what happens with that, with the Rose and Weili rematch coming up in New York. So we'll see. But I don't really know what's next for Shevchenko. At this point, I think she can just sit on her couch and relax and have a nice vacation. And hopefully somebody over this wintertime steps up as a contender, and she doesn't have to wait too long for another fight because she's getting up there in age too, and she wants to stay active. So
let's go, Joanne Calderwood, baby.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, if she can win, I think she definitely has to be next. I know they were scheduled at one point, and that's right. They were scheduled and the fight got canceled, and they never rescheduled it. So,
yep.
Also on the card, of course, Robbie Lawler, Nick Diaz. Man, I know Nick Diaz definitely had his moments in this fight. There was definitely times he rocked Robbie Lawler because Robbie was going head first into everything. Robbie, like, he started moving. The moment Robbie started moving his head, like in the second and like definitely in the third round, the fight was over. Because like he was landing at will when he threw punches on Nick Diaz. Nick had no defense. But Nick would do his dirty boxing. Nick would throw out some combos. And Nick, for his part, like threw like 200 plus punches or some shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like Nick threw a lot of output for somebody that's been off for 6 years and definitely looked out of shape. I will say this, and I'll kick it to you for this thoughts. I hate when Nick Diaz says, but no excuse, after he gives an excuse. Like the first thing out of his mouth was, well, you know, my management kind of like messed up this fight for me. But no excuses. Like that's Nick Diaz's famous thing, right? He did the same thing after he fought George St. Pierre, and I had a whole article on Art of MMA about Nick Diaz and no excuses, but he makes like 18 excuses. Nick Diaz has had 6 years to get ready for this fight. I don't care if it was sprung on him last second. I don't care if it wasn't who he was looking to fight. I don't care. At this point, I think it was clear to me, and I'm only speaking for me. I'm not talking for Brandon or any fans at home. I like Daniel Cormier is like, I hope we see you in the cage again. I don't. I want to remember Nick Diaz as the warrior that we saw in UFC and Strikeforce, the champion and the title contender and the guy who gave it all. I don't want to see that Nick Diaz that got knocked down in the third round, had a chance to get up because Robbie walked away and said, stand him up, and he quit. He quit because he's not that guy anymore. And that's no shame because Nick Diaz is a Hall of Famer, but he's not that guy that we remember. What do you think about that fight?
And I said Robbie Lawler was going to win, and Robbie Lawler won. I think just like I said, Robbie Lawler's been active. Nick Diaz has not. 6 years is 6 years. You know, to me, man, he just seemed like Nick Diaz just seemed like he was a rusty guy. Like, say, he hasn't done anything in 6 years, hasn't done a walkout 6 years, hasn't done media press in 6 years. You know, everything's always different. You know, like I mean, like say, like you know, he started out a little slow, but then hey, he did pick up things a little bit later on in the first round. You know, but same thing, man. Though Robbie Lawler, he made his adjustments in the second and third round, and hey, he got the finish. You know, hey, like I said, I don't know what's going on in Nick Diaz's camp. You know, like I said, I know his management. They had split ways, and I think his coach, Cesar Gracie, is the one like you know controlling him. But like I know this man, he wasn't trying to fight Robbie Lawler, but somehow the Robbie Lawler fight got made, and then he only had 6 weeks to get ready for this fight. You know, hey, you know, really 6 weeks isn't really 6 weeks. 6 weeks is really 5 weeks, but you know it is what it is, you know. Like I said, I mean, hey, if he fights again, you know, I know people will be craving for it. I mean, if he does fight again, I'd probably say, hey, man, maybe he could fight a Matt Brown, you know, another welterweight, you know, fight at 170, not at 185. Give yourself plenty of time to get yourself ready for that fight. But that's somebody who I think Nick Diaz could fight, you know, is a Matt Brown if he's still around when that time comes.
I think it was real shitty what they did because Nick Diaz knew he wasn't going to make 170. He knew it. And to tell Robbie Lawler, I think on Tuesday, hey, would you be okay if we fought this at middleweight? Knowing you weren't going to make 170. And you didn't even want to try. Robbie, who was already in 170 mode, I feel like if Robbie had come in at a healthy 185, Like, if he knew that fight was going to be at 185 and came in healthy, that fight would have been over in the first round. Robbie clearly had 170 power, and Nick Diaz clearly came in at 185, ready to fight at 185. I think Robbie weighed in at 184 or something because he kind of like stopped cutting weight or something like at that point. But I think it was unfair to Robbie Lawler. But Robbie, Robbie's like no F's given, right? He's going to come through and do what he has to do. He's been doing this for a very long time. So if that's Robbie's like last fight, I think it's a great way to go out. If it's Nick's last fight, I think people are going to just tend to forget about it and just remember the early years, and hopefully his legacy doesn't get damaged by what we saw. Because he was very competitive in this fight despite not being in the best of shape and not being ready to fight. So on the rest of the card, Curtis Blaydes just dominated Rosenstrike. He used his wrestling. He used his grappling. Rosenstrike never really got going. I was hoping we'd see a little something different from him, but Rosenstrike, when he gets faced with those grapplers, he just doesn't want to do it. Andrade, we just talked about. I'm sorry, Andrade. She just dominated Cavillo. Nobody's ever stopped Cynthia Cavillo before. She did in the first round. And honestly, I like Cavillo's strategy, but going backwards against somebody like Andrade is not going to work out well for you. In my pick, Merab Dvalishvili did get the win, but man, Marlon Moraes had his moments early in that fight. But then he had to do what he had to do, obviously with the takedowns, and got the best of that one. I think even if it hadn't gotten stopped then, it would have gotten stopped later. Merab is just a monster, and I'm looking forward for him to get more respect in that division as well and get more opportunities because he should be fighting for a championship very soon. Dan Hooker bounced back, got the win against Nasrat Hagarasat. Dominant as usual. Dan Hooker probably bounced himself back into that lightweight contender series. Kind of hard with Dan Hooker, right, Brandon? Because like when he fights the top guys, he hasn't won, but then he dominates like everybody else, just like another one of those stories, right?
I mean, he beat Paul Felder. I mean, when Felder was ranked and everything like that, but
that was like, I mean, yes, but that was a top 10, not a top 5.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough with Dan Hooker, and of course, Dan Hooker is going to be the subject of some of the news we talk about later, so stay tuned for that. Chris Daukaus continues his like skyrocketing up the heavyweight rankings. I know a lot of people haven't really liked the comparison I have with him and Cyril Gane, but to me, they're very, very similar. There is talk now, I believe, of Daukaus fighting. This was kind of breaking today. Daukaus possibly fighting Derek Lewis in December, I think. So hopefully that fight comes to pass. I'd be very interested. I'd actually, as much as I love Derek Lewis, I think he'd have the same problems he had with Cyril Gane in a Chris Daukaus fight because Daukaus has the same ability to move around. He can grapple if he wants. He can strike if he wants. And I really feel like Derek Lewis's biggest problem, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, is that he doesn't deal well with people that move. Like if you stay in front of him, you're going to sleep, right? Like Blaydes like stood in front of him. He tried to take him down, do whatever, but he was right in front of him. Cyril Gane was never right in front of him. Ngannou never right in front of him. So I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously he beat Ngannou the first time, but I just feel like Derek Lewis is like he's a stand in the box. If you stand in the box with him, it's lights out. If you don't, he's going to lose, and that's kind of what we got. Taila Santos continues to dominate. She beat tough veteran and Roxanne Modafferi 30-27. And then Jalen Turner with one of the upsets of the night got through a naked choke on Medic. Medic was undefeated coming into that fight. I actually was heavily favored over Uros Medic. Jalen Turner looked every bit the part. He didn't look like it was an upset. He looked like he belongs. So congrats to him. Maximov with the win over Brundage. That was a great fight. That was very back and forth. Smellsberger got the win over Sano. Big knockout in the first round. And then Jonathan Pierce over Omar Morales. Submission in the second round. Brandon, you got any more thoughts on this card? Any fights that really stood out to you? Obviously, your fight pick got canceled before we ever really got going. So,
yeah, man. But I'm just shout outs to Dan Hooker, man. Like I said, what him and his opponent had to go through, with their visas, traveling, and everything like that. Like I said, man, the man went from New Zealand all the way to Vegas on Thursday, and then he waited on Friday, made weight no problem, fought great. So shout out to Dan Hooker. Waiting to see what's next for him. I mean, I know he had his call out, so we'll see if he gets what he wants.
I missed it. Who'd he call out?
Dariush.
Okay, that'd be a good fight. I like that one. Benil. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's another guy stuck in that lightweight like mumble jumbo of who fights who, when, and where. But yeah. So that's our coverage of UFC 266. Definitely a great card, fun card to watch. One quick mention before we move on to some other stuff. One Championship also had their Revolution event on the 24th. Saw a brand new champion. I talked him up, the Phenom Christian Lee. Well, I also talked up Ray Unoke when he fought Eddie Alvarez. And after that, I think the guy has a really bright future in MMA, and he showed it. He took Christian Lee by unanimous decision for their title. It's kind of confusing the way they do it, welterweight, lightweight. So he's the new champion. We'll leave it at that one. So that was fantastic. They also had some great kickboxing fights, Muay Thai mixed up with some MMA. And then the younger Lee, Victoria Lee, the youngest sister, she did get a TKO win in the second round. So go out and check out one if you have a chance. I'm sure it's on YouTube and some other highlights you can watch. They're always a fun card. All right, Brandon, we mixed up the format a little bit this week to kind of like get the action right up front, but there are some major news stories. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this week in MMA. Man, how do you start off with anything other than Jon Jones? Once again, Jon Jones, I mean, really does what Jon Jones does, right? Highlight of his career. He's getting honored at the UFC for the Alex Gustafsson fight, one of the greatest fights in history. We all remember that. Hell, they went to the hospital together, and they were sitting there high-fiving in the hospital because they knew what kind of classic war they put on. And then the same night, early in the morning, comes home, according to police reports, comes home drunk, gets in a domestic violence situation with his woman. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, so evidently, and I read more in the TMZ report than we initially saw, obviously, so I'm glad we had a couple days to really digest this whole story. But allegedly, and I say allegedly because he hasn't been convicted of anything, allegedly, the woman comes with the woman, the girlfriend, who also is the mother of his three children, two or three children. They came down to the security station asking for a room key or something like that, and the guy saw blood on her shirt and on her. And he was like, "Are you okay?" And either the son or the woman asked them to call the police. And of course, the police come, check it out, arrest Jon Jones. As Jon Jones is getting arrested, the dummy headbutts a cop car, which is what, like, people were wondering what the vandalism and damage, like, claim was. Well, that's what it was. He headbutted a cop car while being arrested. And the footage will probably come out at some point because they did record this whole thing. But according to police reports, basically challenged every police officer on the scene to a fight and said, "I wonder what would happen if I took all of you on at once," to being remorseful and sorry, to then once again challenging everybody to a fight and going back and forth because he was clearly under some kind of influence, mostly alcohol at the time. Brandon, I really even hate to put this on you, but what do you think of this? And is this the end of Jon Jones?
Hey, man. I mean, Jon Jones has had issues like his whole career. I know Dana White trying to say, "Oh, can't bring him to Vegas." Like, no, it's not Vegas. That's Jon Jones, because Jon Jones has issues back in New Mexico. You know, it doesn't matter where he is. There's issues.
Albuquerque's very familiar with him.
Yeah, you know, so I don't know what Dana White's doing. Just Dana White just being Dana White, which I know we're going to get into later on. But, I mean, the right thing to do is, I mean, I really kind of am never against somebody losing their job. But to me, man, all the nonsense this guy has done, maybe it is time to release him. You know, like I think about it going back to, football, Josh Gordon. You know, he used to always get suspended every time. And then, boom, teams would just cut him. And then they would have to deactivate him. And then now, like, time has gone on, then they want to reinstate him. I mean, it could be the same thing with Jon Jones. It'd be like, hey, let him go. The only thing is, like, you got to hope that, like, no promoter is going to want to touch him, with the type of, news he'll bring and everything like that. So, but to me, it's like, he's not doing anything. He's not fighting anyway. So what do you need him for? You know, you don't need him right now.
Yeah, I think what it did was clear up the heavyweight division problem. People were waiting to see what happens with Jon Jones. He was talking about fighting early second quarter of 2022. He's got his weight up to like 260 or something like that. He wanted to get all the way up to 275 and then cut down for fights. For every part that Jon Jones does well, he takes 2 steps backwards. The young phenom we remember as a 20-year-old champion is long gone. In the cage, he's still that vicious monster. He's still one of the pound-for-pound greatest fighters. But outside the cage, he's one of the pound-for-pound greatest fuck-ups. And excuse my language, but that's really what it is. Nobody's been given more like on a silver platter because of it. And Jon Jones earned everything he's got. He's had it. One of the most naturally gifted fighters that we've ever seen in our lifetime. He can do everything. He can strike. He can wrestle. He's long. He's athletic. He was a phenom at 20, and at this point, he's probably still one of the top fighters ever. One thing that upsets me is it took this incident right here, it took for UFC to finally put Usman in the number 1 pound-for-pound rankings and move Jones down to 2. When Jones has barely fought in the last 2 years, when Usman's fought like 3 or 4 times, why was Jones number 1 to begin with when Usman's been putting in the work and doing the damage? It took this incident. So that's kind of disheartening. All said, obviously the evidence and everything else will come out and the facts will come out. Jon Jones for himself has come out publicly and like, I'm swearing off alcohol forever. Well, Jon, unfortunately, we have to wait and see that because you swore off drugs and you went right back to them. You swore off alcohol, you went right back to it. Unfortunately, Jon, as somebody who's been around the alcohol business forever as a bartender, I've seen people with vices and people with addictions, and you have one and you need help. And I hope you do get that help, and I hope you turn your life around. You have kids, you have a family. I hope you turn that around. But fighting should be the least of your concerns right now because you got demons you're fighting on the inside, and those have to come first. Other news, this one will get Brandon fired up a little bit. Sterling stepped out of the fight in October with Yan. Sterling is coming off a neck surgery where he had some damage in his neck that's been built up over years. He had an elective surgery to get it done. He admitted himself. He got tired of dealing with the nagging stuff. He wanted to be 100%. He got this surgery done. So that pushed back the summer rematch from Yan and Sterling into the fall. Sterling last week came out and said, well, I'm in the best shape of my life, but I'm not ready to fight yet, which led to a bunch of debate in the MMA community. It led to debate with Petr Yan. So I know Brandon has strong feelings on this one, so I'm going to get to him for a full thought in this one. If you're on the Sterling side, the argument is that Sterling was having fatigue issues from the neck injury. He says he feels the best he's felt in forever, but he couldn't get his endurance and his fatigue past 2 rounds of training. Was he overtraining? Did he need to take a week off and kind of come back and try again? Or was he just the neck not responding the way, the nerves and stuff not responding the way that he hoped to soon after surgery? He wanted to have this fight in December. He wanted to push it back to December, and he thought he'd be ready by then. If you're in the Petr Yan camp, which came out, he said it in Russian, but basically called him a sneaky coward. He said Sterling doesn't want this fight. He hasn't wanted this fight. That he immediately called for an interim fight, and we did find out officially yesterday, I believe, that it will be him and Sandhagen on the 30th for the interim title, not for the real title, for the interim title, which is obviously UFC's code nowadays for a number 1 contendership. And then when Sterling's ready, whether December, January, February, whatever, then the winner would fight that for the unified title. Brandon, you know how I feel about this. I felt that, and sorry, my camera keeps blurring up people at home. I feel like Sterling's been going out of his way to avoid this fight since the moment he lost. When he first came out and lost, he was like, oh, I didn't want to win the title like this. And then all of a sudden he's bragging about it. I'm the champion. He's walking around with it. And he blamed his friends at first, and then he kind of took credit for it. And I don't want to put it all on Sterling because I'm a big believer of I don't think a title should change hands on a disqualification. I don't think the champion should keep the belt either. MMA is one of those things where they consider every title defense like a new championship, right? Like Jon Jones is like, I'm like 15-time champion or whatever, when they were arguing over him and Khabib. But if you're going to consider every championship defense basically like a new championship, I feel like if you get disqualified, the championship should just become vacant. Like, I don't feel like the title should change hands, because then it's not on Sterling at that point. Sterling can get the win, but he doesn't get the belt because he didn't come out and straight up win it. But then Jan's not the champion either. Sterling, for his part, has been like, you lost by disqualification. You shouldn't get a rematch. And Jan, for his part, was winning the later part of that fight. It was clear and evident that he was going to win. And he made a very bad decision, whether it was on purpose or not. He listened to his corner instead of paying attention to what was going on in front of him. Doesn't matter. It happened, and he made the mistake, and he paid for it dearly by losing his title. It's time to get that championship match back, and Sterling's not ready. What do you think of this whole situation? I know which side you're on, but tell the people at home, because we've talked about this. Tell people what you think of the whole thing.
Hey, man, people are just making, like, man, this is why, like, MMA Twitter is just so toxic anyway. But, like, people...
Well, fairness, this is not just MMA Twitter. This is MMA fighters. This is Petr Yan himself.
Man, dude, Petr Yan's Petr Yan, man. That dude's just whatever, man. Like, dude, like he wants the title, man. But hey, he was the moron who decided to do it in the legal knee. He should have known the rules. He should have understand his English better. You know, dude, that's on him. I said, dude, Aljamain Sterling isn't ready to fight. That's how it goes, man. Yo, this is a physical sport. You know, like, I know everybody, the fans want fights like this, but hey, man, dude, the human body needs time to rest, needs time to heal. Sometimes people aren't ready to go, you know, but hey, people want to side with, like, well, the UFC over here. They want to be, you know, for the company. They're not thinking about really the fights. Like, fans say they're about the fighters, they're for the fighters, but then stuff like this happens, boom, they will turn on a fighter, no problem, because they're not getting what they want. So it is what it is, man. Just chalk up to another about keyboard warriors out here. You know, just people just not knowing any better.
Like I said, I would agree with you if that was just the fans talking. And I know you didn't agree with my comment I made on Twitter where I thought that he was trying to avoid this fight. And I still stand by that. I do feel like I don't think he wants this fight. I think in the best case scenario, Sandhagen will beat Petr Yan and Sterling will jump right in there to beat Sandhagen because that's a fight he knows he can win. Obviously, we have to see what happens with TJ Dillashaw coming back from his surgery as well, because even though he beat Sandhagen, he tore his knee up. There's a number of other contenders.
I'm like, dude, man. I'm like, dude, like, you guys are like, you're acting like, man, like Aljamain Sterling was straight getting whooped from round one all the way on to the end of the fight. He was doing real well. I want to say he probably won the first 2 rounds of that fight.
He won the first. He didn't win the first 2. By the second, third, and fourth, it was over.
No, you know, and then again, then I want to play on you with this was like, oh man, the fight was over. How do you know, man? Something could have happened in the 4th or 5th round. Hey, just like how you did with your boy Chris Martinho, where you didn't want that fight to end. He wasn't beating Sean O'Malley, but hey, let's keep it going. Anything can happen in MMA, right?
And I've said as much. I agree.
But hey, the fight was over. He wasn't winning. How do you know? He could have came out. He could have maybe got a submission in the 5th round. That's what I'm trying to say. Man. Like, you don't know what could have happened. But all I'm saying is, like, yo, the fight happened in March. All right. They wanted to try to push it along. Dude, when you got other champions who haven't defended the belt and how long they want to try to strip a belt, doing an interim title right away. It's like, dude, this stuff makes absolutely no sense. It's like certain fighters, they will strip. Certain fighters, people will harp on and not blame them. Like, think about like Dominic Cruz. Dude was injured for 3 years. Nobody was asking for him to get his belt stripped. Nobody was really thinking about anything. Nobody was getting on Dominic Cruz. The dude was always getting hurt. Same thing with like Amanda Nunes. She hasn't defended her 135 belt since 2019. But everybody's cool with her. They're doing her thing now. Saying she was supposed to fight over the summer. Oh, she got COVID. But nobody's flipping out on her about it. You know what I'm saying? It just got pushed back. Let the same thing happen here. They were supposed to fight in October. It got pushed back. You know?
But there's different. Come on, Brandon. You know there's different circumstances. It's not like Sterling had 3 or 4 title defenses. He's never defended the belt. And on top of that, how many people give Conor shit for like never defending the 145 or 155 belt?
Please. All the fans still love him. Oh, I want to see Conor fight. Nobody gets on him because he doesn't defend it. And he says, oh, I'm just going to go up to another weight class anyway.
Well, he doesn't pull out of fights either.
But
and also you got to look at the fact that Sterling won the belt by disqualification. It's not a traditional. I'm not saying anything bad. It's not Sterling's fault. That's what happened. He didn't choose to knee himself in the face. But what I'm saying is that it's a situation that we've never really seen, at least in the modern era of MMA, of a champion losing his belt on disqualification. We always knew it was possible. I remember when Jon Jones fought Chael Sonnen and he broke his toe between the rounds or in the side of the cage, and his toe was basically hanging off. And if the doctor saw it between the rounds, he would have stopped the fight and Chael Sonnen would have been the champion. Luckily, he didn't, and then John came out in the second round and finished that fight. But anything can happen in a cage. It's just something that we've never actually seen happen. So it kind of gives Sterling that, like I said, not fair to Sterling. It's not his fault. But it gives him that fake champion feel in the eyes of many fans because he didn't really earn it. And then on top of that, he was getting gassed in the third and fourth round. He was fading quick. Could he have pulled off an upset in the last couple of rounds? Anything's possible. I said it at the time. I'll say it now. But he has gone out of his way to say that Yan doesn't deserve another shot. He said it on his little popular vlog and podcast he does. And now for him to pull out, it just kind of adds fuel to that fire. I'll leave the fans at home a chance to decide on that. We got more news to cover before we get into other things, and we don't want to have a 3-hour episode. But each of us have strong feelings on that one. One thing I think we're on the same page for, Israel Adesanya is basically moving to America, and he's bringing city kickboxing with him. I don't really know the details of if they're going to have a gym in New Zealand or they're just moving the whole damn thing to America. But long story short, Izzy's at war with the government there. You heard Brandon talk about the treatment that Dan Hooker got going into this fight. Izzy's of the belief that a lot of people in that government are racist, but why would you treat a national hero like Dan Hooker like that? So he already had one foot in America anyway. He was already working towards becoming a resident in America as is. This has kind of cemented where he is with that. I don't know what that means for a Volkanovski. I don't know what that means for a Dan Hooker or other people that are probably still very loyal to the New Zealand government in their homes because that's where their family is. But for Israel Adesanya, at least, he is moving to America. He's made it official. And he's doing at least a version of city kickboxing in America. Maybe they'll have city kickboxing in America, city kickboxing in New Zealand, and they'll work kind of like cohesively like some of these gyms do. Any thoughts on that situation?
Honestly, I really want to say, man, I will believe it when I see it because Izzy does say a lot of things. You know, he just says stuff just to say things sometimes. So I really won't believe it till I see it. Like I was just listening to an interview with Dan Hooker, and he was kind of like, oh, like, you know, we'll see if it really happens. You know, like if it does, you know, I'll have to talk, with his wife and everything like that, and with the kids, you know, to see if we want to move and everything like that. So. You know, who really knows what's going on, man? I'm saying it could just be Izzy just talking. You know, he's just upset about something. So he just wants to say a whole bunch of things. So,
yeah, I think it's a different time period with the pandemic and everything, not just the government issues, but now you're adding the pandemic and people want to be safe. People want to be cautious. And New Zealand's with tighter restrictions in some countries because they don't want a lot of cases of COVID. And so they have a lot of stuff. Dan Hooker famously took 3 months after his last fight before he could go home and see his family again because he had to clear quarantines and do this and do that. And maybe it wasn't 3 months, but it was definitely a long time.
Mm-hmm.
In other news, Rafael dos Anjos is undergoing knee surgery, but he does think he'll be ready for his UFC 267 matchup with Makhachev. So hopefully that fight's not in jeopardy. I've been looking forward to that one. And last bit of news, Tyron Woodley finally got the I Love Jake Paul tattoo right there on his middle finger. I don't know if this screams desperate for money and desperate for a rematch. Because that's the only reason I think he would actually have gotten the tattoo. But we'll see. That's what Jake Paul thinks. You know, he said he bought a used Bentley and talked to his management team and realized he ain't got no money. So I'm going to get this tattoo so I can get this rematch with Jake Paul. I don't know. I don't want to see a rematch only because I don't think Tyron Woodley's going to do anything different. The last 5 or 6 fights we've seen Tyron Woodley, he comes out, when he throws his hands, he does damage. When he doesn't throw his hands, he loses the fight because he just is so dormant in that ring or in the cage. So I don't know. Do you want to see the rematch?
I mean, I don't think Jake Paul wants to see a rematch. He's always talking about Tommy Fury. So I mean, dude, Woodley, you lost your shot, man. If I were you, I'd maybe go call out somebody else in boxing and go from there.
Yeah, pretty much. And I don't think it was the tattoo they were talked about. Originally, I think they were supposed to get a tattoo on his calf or something like that, and like a bigger tattoo. And instead, he got just like the words written on the finger or something.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking. I mean, maybe he could get a fight with Logan Paul instead of Jake Paul this time.
That's possible, but Logan just had like broke his wrist or whatever or something like that, so he's recovering from that.
Yeah.
I've been seeing him with a cast on and stuff. All right, that's our news for the week. This week in MMA, make sure you check it out. Sorry, I keep going between light shades and my camera keeps fading in now. Real quick, we're going to jump into a rant, and then we'll get to our previews and picks and get out of here. The rant won't take very long this week, but it is something that's kind of just been eating at me. Brandon knows what the show notes say this segment's called. I'm going to be a little bit more polite and say Dana White is a piece of garbage. And it goes back to the old adage. How do you know a promoter's lying, Brandon?
When they open their mouth.
Yep, open their mouth and moving their lips. Same thing with a lawyer, right? Dana White, and actually I got more fuel to this when I was listening to Brandon pre-show because he played a clip off MMA Junkie of Dana White ranting at Dana White Contender Series about some other issues. Dana White is what you call a bully, right? From day one, from his boxing days in Boston to when he tucked his tail between his legs and ran out to Las Vegas because Whitey Bulger wanted to have him offed, right? Dana White had crossed the wrong people. Dana White has been this obnoxious, just thick-headed, I'm in charge, you listen to me. If you're on my team and you're listening to me, you're my best friend. The moment you turn against me or you're not on my team, you're the enemy. And I can write some of that off to being competitive in sports. But one thing that mixed martial arts has always been about is you can go to war before the event, but after the event, we shake hands, we go the different ways. We've spilled blood in an octagon or went to war, and now all of a sudden we have a respect for each other. I don't think Dana White respects anybody that's not on his team. At one point, he turned against one of his best friends, Chuck Liddell. He's obviously had that war with Oscar De La Hoya. And look, I'm not a De La Hoya fan. I think De La Hoya is another piece of work. He has badmouthed anybody that's left the promotion and not his fighter anymore. For years, he propped up Yoel Romero, knowing Yoel was aging and slowing down. He still propped him up. He only cut Yoel Romero for budget reasons. Let's not bullshit at home that Yoel Romero got cut because he wasn't an effective fighter. He got cut because he was making more and he was 44 years old. That's why Dana White cut Yoel Romero. Along with a number of other fighters they cut at the beginning of this year, if you remember, Brandon, when we were talking about all those fighter cuts and late last year in November and stuff. Yoel Romero goes to Bellator, has a performance against Phil Davis, which Phil Davis dominated. Dana White has badmouthed Phil Davis in the past, and now he badmouths Yoel Romero for looking bad against Phil Davis. Well, first of all, Yoel Romero was kind of active at one point in that fight and was fighting back more than he had in the past. And two, Phil Davis is a whole nother level above him. But instead of paying respect to Phil Davis and his win, they're like, see, Bellator, that's what you get. All Dana does is talk shit out of his mouth. You can go back and look at the pay scale issues from 2005 until 2019, when the numbers were official. UFC paid their fighters a revenue share of 12 to 13% to a maximum of 16% in 2019, to the point that even Jorge Masvidal last year at one point was quoted, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact quote, but basically it's like they're gonna have to step up because I'm not gonna fight for 18% of the revenue. And that's one of their more higher paid fighters now because of he's made a name for himself. Unless you're Conor McGregor, Jon Jones, Khabib was one of the highest paid fighters of last year. Some argue that they got up to 48% last year, which I hope they did, which is still lower than the number they should be, but I hope they did. But you're talking about 14, 15 years where you didn't pay anybody, Dana. Y'all kept it and put it in your pocket. You got richer. You went around, and I'm glad you reinvested into the business and made the business bigger for everybody. You built performance centers all around the world, performance institutes in Vegas, so on and so forth. I'm glad you're reinvesting, and I'm glad you kept building the brand because it makes more money for all MMA fighters. But you yourself have played bully ball. You bullied the likes of Ariel Helwani, who got this dream job at ESPN. I'm not an Ariel Helwani fan, despite what Brandon thinks. But look, dream job ESPN, you bullied him from the day like you stepped on the scene. He got this dream job at ESPN. He could not be on the set at the same time you were. You made him leave the building if you were coming in to do an interview. How is that fair practice? Why? Because you didn't like that Ariel broke the Brock Lesnar story before you could? He's a journalist. Was it shady that he did it? Maybe. You're trying to ruin a surprise for the fans? Maybe. But you want to be considered a legitimate sport? Guess what? News leaks. This isn't WWE. This isn't AEW. This isn't a surprise. Oh my God, you got to watch every week to see what happens. You want to be a legitimate sport? The news gets reported. You can't get mad at the guy reporting the news. Get mad at the person that leaked the news to him, right? Because Ariel Helwani didn't get the news on his own. Somebody told him. And the news was accurate, first of all. So, like, what are you doing? Dana, you've been playing bully ball since God knows how long. And whether it's going head-to-head with Tito Ortiz, whether it's the whole Chuck Liddell getting paid situation, whether it's pay fighters like, Shamrock, later on the lawsuit with Kung Lee, John Fitch, Nate Quarry, and a bunch of others that are all fighting for UFC pay. You go on this whole rant after the Contender Series yesterday and talking about how you've done so much more for the fighters. Well, this is the last thing I'll say on this rant, and I'll let Brandon get his 2 cents thoughts in and really finish his note. If you get a low-end $12,000, right, Brandon, that was the low-end fight, $12K.
Yeah, 12 and 12.
Like, say you fight 4 times in a year and get $12K, right, each fight. That's if you win, like 6 and 6, right?
Yeah.
$12K. You're like looking on paper like, all right, that's $48,000. That's not a bad year. That's more than a lot of Americans make. All right, taxes take at least a quarter of that. So now you're down to $36,000. Your coaches, your training partners, your travel expenses, your dietitians, everybody involved, that's taking pretty much at least half of the rest of your money. So now you just made $18,000 and put your life on the line 4 times for the UFC, who's probably made at least $1 million for every event that you were on. And for bigger pay-per-views, obviously, Conor McGregor's making, $20 million after his royalties and his rights. Jon Jones, Khabib, all those guys are getting paid. For that low-end person, for Joaquin Buckley, who had that highlight knockout that you played on every highlight, every YouTube channel, every social media, he only made, I believe, I want to say $15,000 for that fight. But you marketed that and made millions off of that he never saw. All he got was another opportunity to fight again. So that's my 2 cents on that. Dana White's been a bully since day one. He's not a good person. He's a piece of garbage. You don't have to be in this business, but ethics go a long way with me. And you might think I'm being a snowflake or PC or whatever, but I can line up about at least a few dozen fighters that will say exactly the same thing I'm saying, that are a lot tougher than I am, that would knock Dana White's teeth down his throat if they had the chance to and they weren't being paid by the UFC or formerly of. Brandon, what's your thoughts on the whole thing?
And like I tell everybody, man, there are other promotions besides the UFC, but everybody just wants to go to the UFC. That's how they're able to keep their stranglehold. If people will get smart, which of course, that's one of the knock on fighters, that fighters aren't smart, that they're just dumb people. But they really get smart and business savvy and just know, hey, there are other options. Then that's when the UFC would have to change things up. So I'm saying, man, dude, you go to a Bellator, you go to a PFL. I'm saying even they, and me, I'm not really a big fan of it, but hey, man, bare knuckle boxing, man, they're paying you more. Go do that. I mean, especially if you're a stand-up fighter. Like if you're a stand-up fighter, then go to bare knuckle, go to boxing. They're gonna pay you more. But if you're an MMA person,
go to glory.
Yeah, or if you're an MMA person, like legit, like go to a Bellator. They have Showtime now back. They're on Showtime, but they have a network. They have Paramount, Viacom, CBS. Backing them up. You got the PFL. They're also on ESPN as well. You know, so it means like, dude, there are options there. And plus two, with those other companies, you can get your own sponsorships. With the UFC, you can have your own sponsorship. So it's just like people, wise up,
And even like Dana said in his rant yesterday, if you don't like it, go start your own promotion. Well, guess what, Dana? People are. And eventually you're going to be looking back in the mirror and be like, damn, I fucked up. All right, it's picks time. We're going to kind of breeze through the picks a little bit because I know Brandon has to get out of here very shortly. Last week, I went 3-1. The only thing I got wrong was the Ortega fight. Brandon went 3-0 because his fight got dropped out. I thought it was my chance to make up some points, but his little ass had to go 3-0 and push me further down the percentage points. Tim Wheaton went 2-1, so he's actually back to 500 now. Congratulations, Tim. You're now 11-11. Way to get back on the good side. We have to get Eric back on the show at some point because Eric's 0-3 and he's got to redeem himself at some point. And then Alex keeps having Alex Soto is one of the busiest people. I'm surprised I nail him down on Thursdays for Crossing Borders because he's one of the busiest people you'll see. But he's 2-0. He's rocking that perfect record, but he doesn't qualify. His batting average is not enough at bats, so it doesn't qualify. All right, let's go ahead and talk about some picks. We're going to start off with Bellator 267, Lima versus MVP 2. Last time they faced off, Lima knocked MVP clean out. Brandon, what do you see happening in this main event?
I see the same thing, man. I just think Lima is just better than MVP. That's it. I mean, he for sure to me hits harder. I think he is he's the powerful striker. Like I said, I mean, hey, they both had good stand-up, but I just think Lima will get his hand raised again, and MVP will be 0-2 against Lima.
I'm actually going to go opposite of you, and the only reason why is I'm kind of rooting for Lima, which is kind of opposite of what I'm saying here. I like Lima better as a fighter. I think he's more all-around. Lima's been on a skid. Like, he hasn't looked himself the last couple fights. MVP's looked phenomenal the last couple fights. He's showing better takedown defense, so he doesn't really necessarily have to worry about Lima's takedowns. One of the reasons why I think he got knocked out last time is because if Lima changes levels, his head goes down, right? Lima came across, knocked him out. This case, I don't think he's worried about it. I think he's evolved. You always talk about evolving as a fighter. You can't really look at the past and what happens in the future. You tell me that all the time. And I usually argue with you, but this case, I think you're right. I think MVP's going one way, despite their history, and I think Lima's going the other way. I mean, if you remember, Conor McGregor knocked out Dustin Poirier the first time they fought. The second and third time, they were different fighters. Poirier was definitely a better fighter. So I know it wasn't that long ago, maybe a year and a half ago, but I just think MVP is going one way, and I think Lima's going the other, and I think I'm going to pick MVP in this one. Over in the co-main event, King of the Lady Fighters, I'll let you guys start this one off. Leah McCourt versus Jessica Borga, two fighters that are both these ladies are very tough. Obviously, McCourt's the one kind of on the skyrocket to the top. What do you expect out of this fight?
I got Leah McCourt winning this fight. I just think overall she is the better fighter. So I definitely see her getting her hand raised. I know that she doesn't have that many fights in her MMA career, but I just think she is just a better fighter and she's going to get her hand raised.
Do you think at all that any of Jessica's ground game could be a factor?
I mean, Leah McCourt has been on the ground too. I want to say with Leah McCourt, it's just like how I said with Volkanovski against Ortega, that yes, Ortega does have the advantage on the ground, but I think Volkanovski has enough defense to keep himself safe, which is what happened in the fight. I think the same thing here will happen as well.
I mean, I'm picking Leah McCourt too. I was just playing devil's advocate. I think it'll be a tougher fight than people expect. I think Borga definitely is a very tough out, and she has the ground game to kind of compete. So we'll see. I think Leah McCourt will win this one. I think she's just the higher pedigree of the fighter at different levels, like we talked about. Also on the card, you got Whiteford versus Fisher. Two guys both kind of trying to get into the top contender spots. You have an undefeated Luke Traynor going against a very tough Yannick Body. Yves Landau versus Tim Wild. Both of those guys have knockout power. Louis Long going against Michael Dubois. You got Kane Musa versus Davey Gallen. You got Elena I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm sorry, but Kelly Anadu versus Petra Kaskova. Charlie Leary versus Benjamin Brander is going to be a fun fight. Jack Grant versus Nathan Jones. Never really know what to expect out of Nathan Jones. Sometimes he looks like one of the top guys. Other times he looks like he shouldn't be in the cage. So I really don't like. He's very Heckle and Jekyll. Got Diaz versus Rose. Karapenko versus Katerina Dalista. And then Kakarov versus Junior. Kakarov, of course, another undefeated fighter. Any of those fights really kind of stand out to you that think people should keep an eye on?
I mean, besides the other ladies fight, I kind of have my eye on the person's name who you butchered. I think she's gonna get her hand raised anyway.
First of all, there's 2 other ladies fights. And I butcher a lot. And I butcher a lot of names. So you have to be more specific. Now I know who you're talking about. You're talking about Alina versus Petra.
Yeah.
Because that was the only one I really butchered. But I did kind of mess up the list as well. So I did mess up both of them. So there you go. It wouldn't be an episode, Brandon, if I don't mess up a name. It is what it is. I'm really looking forward to that Nathan Jones fight versus Jack Grant. I want to see which Nathan Jones shows up.
Yeah.
Grant's another guy who's kind of trying to come up. So we'll see. And then also that Landu Tim Wild fight, I think, is going to be a fun fight as well. So everybody check out Bellator. It's going to be over in London. So I'm not sure what they're doing timing wise. So check your local listings.
Yeah, I think it's a live show at 4:00 is when the main card is. I think
4:00 on Showtime.
So yeah.
So check your local listings. I'm sure Showtime will show a replay later on at night as well, if you miss it live. And then of course, and that's going to be on the 1st, so that'll be on Friday. And then of course the next night, UFC Vegas 38, Thiago Sanchez versus Johnny Walker. I think that's going to be a barn burner. I think. I'm actually picking Johnny Walker. I know I'm always been on the Thiago Santos train. I'm picking Johnny Walker. Santos has not looked the same since he tore up his knees against Jon Jones. He's had very tough matchups coming back, but he has not looked like himself. There's been no part of a Thiago Santos fight the last couple fights that I thought, you know what, maybe he can beat Teixeira. Maybe he can beat Rakic. Nah, those guys have dominated him. And every time he would land a big punch, you get excited, like, all right, here comes Thiago Santos. He hasn't been the same guy. I don't know if he's still recovering from the knee injuries because, sometimes knee injuries take a year or two to really get your full mobility left. But he's also an older fighter, Brandon. He's 37. Your knees aren't going to heal the way they did when you were 27. And that's not a knock on his skill. I know you like to think I bash older fighters. But he is 37 coming off double knee surgery against Jon Jones. Now, Jon Jones, I think he beat Jon Jones. If I look at that fight, I've watched it a couple times, I think he won that fight. And he did it with 2 torn ligaments in both knees. But since that fight, he hasn't looked like himself. He hasn't moved the way he normally moves. And he's a phenomenal coach. I know he coaches his fiancée, Yana. I know he coaches a lot of American top team people. I think that's more where his passion should probably be heading at this point because he's a top contender. He's always got a puncher's chance. But Johnny Walker's looked phenomenal his last couple fights. And I really think that Johnny Walker will be the better fighter in this one, especially if he fights. I mean, he had a couple hiccups against Krylov and Corey Anderson, but the way he looked against Ryan Spahn, the way he looked before that against a number of opponents in a row, if he's got his swagger back, if he's got his confidence back, I think Johnny Walker wins this fight. What do you think?
I'm going with Thiago Santos, actually. To me, the thing is, like, Santos is a tough dude. Like, yes, has he been dominated? Yes, but he hasn't really been stopped. While Johnny Walker, on the other hand, he was stopped. You think about his fight with Corey Anderson. So to me, man, Santos, he can land that nice shot on Johnny Walker's jaw. Man, he could maybe put him out. That's really it. And like I say, Santos is durable, man. He can go 5 rounds. He did it with Jon Jones on bad knees. Johnny Walker, though, can he go 5 rounds? Is he just a one round fighter, a 2-round fighter? So this is where I think we will kind of see really, really, really where Johnny Walker is. But I just think Santos is going to be too much for me. He's going to get his hand raised.
Only because you love to correct me whenever I'm wrong, which I'm wrong a lot. Santos did get stopped by Glover in the 3rd round from the rear naked choke. But I mean, knockout. I just by pointing it out there because you love to correct me and I'm always wrong. So this one time I was like, I got you. All right, over in the co-main event. I don't know how Kevin Holland at this point is getting co-main events. I know he's a name at this point. He's built it up, but the way he's looked the last couple fights, I don't know. But Kevin Holland versus Kyle Dawkins. Go ahead and tell me who you think is going to win that one. I have a feeling I'm going to go the same way as you, but go ahead.
I'm going Kyle Dawkins, Philly guy, just like his big bro, man. They're both been looking good. I just think Dawkins is the better fighter overall. I think the better overall fighter. I say he has the wrestling, he has jiu-jitsu, he has striking. While Holland, on the other hand, really does have submissions. He does have striking. I know he's been working on his wrestling, but I just think Dawkins is the better fighter. And to me, hopefully, this fight could probably go all 3 rounds, and he'll get his hand raised.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dawkins is the more all-around fighter. I think the blueprint on how to beat Kevin Holland has been written the last couple of fights. I think Dawkins' wrestling, is better than people know. And be coming out of that, the wrestling in the Northeast territories, Philly, New York, New Jersey, you have to kind of have a certain wrestling pedigree. And I think Kyle Dawkins has that, along with the jiu-jitsu and the striking. Kevin Holland is always dangerous. He always has a puncher's chance. But you saw against Brunson, you put your head to his chest, there's not much he can do. When he fought Jacare was kind of doing between transitions and trying to get a submission, and he left his head exposed. Well, I don't think Dawkins is going to leave his head exposed. And you saw the same thing, in Kevin Holland's other fight against Vettori. Vettori, who's not the best takedown artist, just took him down at will. Dawkins has stumbled a little bit, but he's lost to Phil Halls, who is another really good wrestler, who also has to have really good striking. He almost came back and won that fight because Halls was fading so fast in the 3rd round. But he did. And then Brendan Allen, who has a full repertoire, is the other loss that Dawkins had. I think Dawkins has more tools in the tank against Kevin Holland. Still a phrase from Tim Wheaton. I'm picking Dawkins as well. We like to pick our own fight picks every week, and my fight pick this week is going to be Nico Price and Alex Oliveira. I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think Alex has kind of looked a little rough his last couple fights. I think age might be catching up to him. Nico Price, even though he's probably around the same age, he just never stops. He goes 100% all the way on. And as the fight goes on, he gets stronger when other people start to fade. So I think Alex Oliveira can come out in the 1st round and kind of do some things. If it gets to the 2nd and 3rd round, I'm picking Nico Price because I think Nico's just going to put so much pressure on him that he'll probably get a stoppage in the 2nd, if not the 3rd round. You have any thoughts on that fight?
Hey man, I just know that is probably fight of the night right there. So people, make sure you don't blink during that one.
And Brandon, what fight are you looking forward to?
I am going with Shevchenko versus O'Neal. Me, like you said, king of the lady fights. Me. But I am not going with. I don't think this Shevchenko will get a win like her sister did. I'm going with Casey O'Neal to stay undefeated. I think that Shevchenko, we've seen she has had trouble with her ground game. She doesn't have the takedown defense like her sister. So I really think that O'Neal is really going to take her down, and she's probably going to get another submission, and she could, and she'll keep her streak going.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just don't know which Shevchenko is going to show up because Antonina, she's like another Heckle and Jekyll type fighter, or Jekyll and Hyde. Sorry, I don't.
There you go.
Yeah, getting it all messed up. But she's like another one of those fighters. Like some days she looks great, some days she doesn't. She's 38 years old now. She's the older sister, and she's been, she's been up and down. And I think Casey O'Neal has way much more strength and speed, and I think she'll definitely get the win in this fight. But Shevchenko has a chance. She's not a slouch. She's 9-3 for a reason.
Yeah,
but she's looked a little rough the last couple of fights. Also on that card, you got Kirkinov versus Jocko. Aspen Ladd versus Chason's finally gotten rescheduled. Hopefully that fight takes place. Knock on wood, because Aspen Ladd the last few years hasn't been really able to get in the cage, and we'd love to see another contender emerge out of that crowded division. Alexander Hernandez versus Mike Breeden is going to be a fun fight. One fight I'm looking forward to. I almost picked this as my fight. I just didn't really know who was going to win. Joe Selecki versus Jared Gordon. Of course, we got a lot of love for Jared Gordon. The only problem is this fight's at 155 pounds. And Jared Gordon said him last time he went back to 145 pounds because he's a better fighter there. And then all of a sudden he takes another fight at 155. I'm assuming that's what the UFC offered, so he just took it and said yes. But Jared Gordon's not the same fighter he is at 145 as he is at 155. So I really I think it's going to be a pick'em fight. The other fight, Betch Correa, probably her retirement fight. She's said it a couple times, but with COVID, she decided to have one more fight against Carol Rosa. I think Rosa's probably going to dominate that fight, but we'll see. Correa's always tough. Devontae Smith versus Jamie Malarkey, I think is going to be a war. I wouldn't be surprised to see Malarkey pull off another upset in that one. Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Perillo. It's going to be a fun fight. Stephanie Egger versus Shanna Young. And then Alejandro Perez versus Johnny Eduardo in the opener of the prelim. Any of those other fights kind of stick out to you?
I mean, really, just kind of really the Alad fight, because, like I said, because before that fight was, I think, a co-main of one of our fights,
co-main,
that we had picked. So I'm kind of looking to see how this fight's gonna go, since we had called it before.
Yeah, for the record, I think we were on opposite sides, weren't we? Didn't I take Lad and you took Chase on?
Yep.
So unofficially, it won't count against our picks, but you know where we stand.
Yeah.
Have you changed, or are you still in the same thing?
I'm still picking Chia-san.
Because Chase-on was the one that got hurt last time, so
yep.
See how she recovers from her injury. All right, folks. Well, that is another episode. Make sure you tune into Fighters First Network. We got a lot of great shows on there, new stuff coming up. Got an interview coming up with Brandon's teammate Solomon Renfro, about to make his UFC Dana White Contender Series debut in October. That will be on Unfiltered later this week. I think I'm going to drop it around Friday or Saturday. Don't hold me to that. And then, of course, Crossing Borders tomorrow. We got Dan's show, Cage My IQ. And, of course, the A show, Art of MMA, every single Wednesday. Brandon and I giving you the best and greatest of everything. If you like the new format with us jumping right into the results first, leave a comment below. Make sure you like and subscribe. Show us some love. Brandon, you got any other thoughts this week?
I mean, hey, people, just remember, like, subscribe, share it, Get some merch if you want to, man. Hoodie season is upon us for those in the Northeast, so make sure you grab yourself a hoodie.
Yeah, I put that post up today just for you all dealing with your fall weather up there. I think it's 89 today down here in Florida, so it's a little chilly.
Yeah.
And then also, hey, Valerie Morris, get a hold of me if you want your free shirt. Last chance. I want to give it to you, so let me do that. Thank you to all that did participate in our anniversary and our giveaway. We appreciate you. We love all your support. Leave a comment below. Leave a like, subscribe. Go on Instagram, Twitter, wherever you are, and leave some comments. Working on some great things with the shop. So fightersfirst.shop. You see the splash on your screen. We're always trying to bring you new and great products. Of course, you got the mechanic collection. Always go and support Brandon in all his dreams and endeavors, and put some money in his pocket. And definitely help support the show. We don't have ads. We don't have everything. Until Dr. Pepper wants to sponsor us, because we both love Dr. Pepper, or DraftKings. Dan has his new DraftKings show, DFS with K, so check that out as well. All right. I'm Mike Ginn for the mechanic Brandon Cuttino. This is Art of MMA. We'll see you next week. We're out.